Well, welcome to the podcast, Tech Diva Success. And I always say I'm really excited for the guest, and I always am, but this guest has a special impact on my life and had spoken at an event over 6 years ago. And so to have her on my show is a true honor and going to be a treat for everyone out there listening. We are here today with Anne Doyle. She's everything. She's a speaker, an author, a journalist. She's been a business executive. She has 2 podcasts that I'm going to make sure to recommend. She served time as a formal elected official, and she most of all is a lifetime change agent. She's been on the front line for women's progress for nearly 5 decades. So for us to fit it all in, I'm going to try to talk faster on her intro so we can get more of her. She's the author of Powering Up: How America's Women Achievers Become Leaders. So this is going to be on my book recommendations. If you're missing it, check out social. We'll have it posted, and has 2 podcasts. One, Powering Up, makes great sense, and the Game Changers podcast, which is part of the International Women's Forum, where Anne has been very active. So she began her career trailblazing in TV news and sports broadcasting in the 70s and 80s, working at CBS Detroit, being one of the first women sports reporters and anchors in the U.S., which is part of her story that definitely influenced me about her, I could say breaking glass, but I should say pushing down doors of the locker room. She's in the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame for that, and for many of her work, for much of her work there. And she also has her business background at Ford Motor Company, doing communications there. And she is just an amazing woman, like I said, for that gender equality. And, her work has taken her to 30 countries and 6 continents, including assignments for the U.S. State Department in the Middle East, Europe, and the Caribbean. And she's the current president of the Michigan chapter of the International Women's Forum that brings over 800 women leaders from 6 continents to Detroit for the conference. And that will be happening in fall 2023, hopefully. But we are here to talk about your greatest bits of wisdom for women in technology. So welcome to the show, Anne.
Hi there, Nicole. Of course, it's fun to be here. I do 2 podcasts, and so it's really fun for me to get to be interviewed instead of doing all the questions.
Absolutely. So is there anything of your background or stories that you want to share with the women in tech that I missed from your wonderful bio?
No, you did a fantastic job. I think I guess the thing that I would say as I was thinking about, talking to your audience today is I know this is a very, very difficult time for particularly for women who are, have children, have families. I mean, I'm at a point in my life, obviously my son is 28 years old, and, and so I have much more independence and flexibility. And I've thought often about how I would have handled it. And it reminded me actually of one of the toughest times in my life was when I was the head of North America Public Affairs for Ford Motor Company at the time of the Explorer Firestone tire crisis. And this is one of the biggest crises in corporate America. It's studied in business schools and journalism schools, and my son was very, very young at that time, and I was just working like around the clock, and people were dying, and I'm having to handle the media, the coverage on this thing, as well as going into Washington D.C. with our CEO, who when he was called before Congress, and I guess that's the best I can remember about that time, because I read all the research, all of you know it, that women are being affected even more than men in terms of this. But men are being affected too. But women, because we have that second shift, it's a really tough time for women. But I think if there's anything I want to say, Nicole, this is also a fantastic time for women. And so I really want to ask your listeners, I mean, in some ways, we are at war. And think back to, Rosie the Riveters and what was going on, let's say even during World War II or a big war like that. But we are at war, and this is a really tough time. And as always, women often carry a very heavy, often a heavier load that isn't always acknowledged, but we know it. And so I think if there's anything I want to say, Nicole, number one is that this is a great time to be a woman. And you know what? It is a great time to be a woman in tech. And all of your listeners have incredible skills. You are in a field that is exploding. And okay, you may feel like you're slipping back a little bit, but you're going to accelerate right out of this thing. And I think that's the biggest message that I want to say is don't get discouraged, don't give up, hang in there, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. I've also seen some research specifically about people working in tech that, women have a much higher level than men of feeling pressure to perform. And that's us holding ourselves to that, higher standard all the time. And so I would just say, hey, take a deep breath. You can do this. Surround yourself with people who remind you how great you are, and just power through this thing.
Yeah, you heard it from Anne. You are great. You can do it. You can do
it. That's the biggest thing. And, we women are the hardest on ourselves, and we're very hard on other women. And I really want to, I wrote in my book, one of the things I wrote about was the mother divide. And, that whole difference between women who have children, or perhaps maybe they're out of the house and grown now by this time, versus women who are in those intense childcaring years, such as you, Nicole.
Yeah.
And, we as women have to acknowledge the incredible importance that they're doing for our nation, really, in terms of, human development. And also the skills that are there. I mean, I think often men give value skills learned in the military, and women tend to not value and bring to the attention of the business world the tremendous skills that are involved in terms of human management, human development, multitasking, all those things that we really need to sort of like own that stuff and value that stuff.
Yeah, we see that a lot in culture building. But you're absolutely right. You're, talking about a time where we're at war, and it is because of the pandemic pushing us out of a comfort zone, but much further out of a comfort zone than we're used to. So like you said, you were enough giving ourselves positive self-talk that you're not going to be the perfect mom or the perfect employee if you're trying to balance it all. And I think something that came to mind too as a call to action is checking in on other mothers. I often don't get to talk on this podcast about my kids because it doesn't really come up so much, but I do have a 4-year-old and a 2-month-old. So having a newborn and having a baby during the pandemic makes it so hard. So I think the little bit of outreach I get from other women who are in similar situations, and I do respect that everyone, if you're alone, it's sad because maybe you can't see as many people and you're limited on going out. I mean, I would not want to be single and trying to find someone during this time, because I imagine dating during COVID.
My son is not dating. My 28-year-old son is like,
I mean, what an opportunity to innovate, right? There needs to be some innovation there. So I agree, it's a great time. But in the midst of this, in the middle of when we're recording this, the pandemic, we're going into the holidays, we're shutting down a lot of the world. You have these tools from your book, from your history, from your life experience that can help us power through and power up at this time. So let's tap into some of those.
Well, I guess there's a couple of things. I mean, one of my longtime mantras is every woman for herself is a losing strategy. And I would really urge women to join the sisterhood. Because we have got, I mean, that's the most powerful thing that we can do, is to join the sisterhood, and that there's there's many, many ways of helping other women. I mean, some of it is just what you said, you know, in terms of checking in with other moms, but it's also making sure if you're in a position in your organization where you can make sure that women are not penalized or lose ground at this time. I mean, to acknowledge the multiple balls that people are having to manage as the whole support infrastructure is crumbling. We have to just acknowledge that. And I think women can do a really good job, particularly of that. You know, I just did was part of a big national conversation 2 days ago about women on boards, and there's a very big push right now of African American women getting African American women of color, but on boards. And I see them coming together collectively in a way I've never seen before. And these are women who are serving on multiple corporate boards, basically saying that they are raising their voices in there to talk about the need for this. And I would encourage women to do the same. Don't hold back at this time about raising your voice about the importance of not losing women talent, because women are being laid off in higher numbers than men. That's often because they're still in more junior positions, but they're being laid off in bigger numbers. And so those who are there and those who are in positions of leadership and influence have got to be raising our voices to not let this happen. So that's one of my pieces about the importance of us starting to leverage our collective influence, because, you know, in my over 4 decades, moving towards 5 decades now of being a professional woman in the workforce, we've seen incredible advancement in terms of individual women. But I like to say that we are in kindergarten still when it comes to leveraging our collective power. And so that's number one.
Hey, Anne, can
Yeah.
you give some examples? Because I love that concept. Obviously, super critical at this time. What's just one or two ways that women could use their collective voices, for example?
Well, I guess that example that I started to talk about, where the women who are serving on corporate boards and, you know, the woman of color was saying, as soon as I get on a board, the first thing I do is try to increase the other number of women on there. And too often, you know, women are, I think there's still a little bit of, I know a lot of women in tech in particular are working in, they may be the only one, or feel as if they don't have a lot of allies. And you know what, I would say you're on the front lines of changing that. And so, you know, if you're the only one, it's all the more important that you raise your voice and you speak up and you take your place at that. But also, I would say, do not hesitate, or you should feel the responsibility to make sure there are more women. And we have seen, you know, that it's not until you get to about a 30% presence in any kind of a group, whether it's a corporate board or whether it's a management team, a work group, until you get to 30%, I mean, that's where the tipping point is. And so I would say women, you know, use your collective power in terms of getting more women in there. That would be one way I would say to do it.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. And then we have a long way to go to get to that 30% in most, especially more technical roles. And I am seeing in action some of the things you're talking about around collective power. For one, support in different employee resource organizations, in different women's groups where they're coming together to give resources and tips. But most of all, to your point, sharing job opportunities. So when you
There you
do see
go.
something available, put it into your pool of women, put it into your women network group, look in your LinkedIn and see who's capable. So that's a great tip. Thanks for
You
that
know,
one.
that's right. You know, actually, and this is what the women even who are serving on these corporate boards said, you know, as soon as you're on one corporate board, you start getting more people coming to you. And so women who are in positions in tech, I mean, often maybe get called by recruiters and things like that. And they said, that's a great opportunity for me to get leads for other women, to get more women. And so, right, take those leads and make sure you're giving them to other women.
Absolutely. What else do you have for us?
Well, another thing that I would say is really important always is to know who your allies are. And I mean really an inventory. I mean like thinking about it and writing it down and then following through and having those conversations. You might have a sort of a vague feeling of who your allies are, and I'm not talking about your best friends, but in a work environment, really assessing, you know, who your allies are, and in some ways also be really clear about maybe who are the people who, maybe just disagree with you or don't think you're that hot, or you know that they're not an ally who's going to help you. And everybody has those. You know, you're never going to have everybody who thinks you're absolutely a superstar, but you're always going to have people who are your allies. And so I would really encourage your listeners to do an inventory of that. I mean, be very, very strategic about identifying, finding who they are, who you think they are, and reach out to them and have a conversation with them. And then, you know, what you do with that, of course, is you talk to them about, let's say, a 1-year plan and even a 5-year plan. I mean, I think I would say that as you're going through this very, very tough time, it might be hard to sort of think way ahead. You're just thinking about like getting through the storm and getting to a safe harbor. But take a little time to think beyond the immediate pressures in terms of where do you want to get? Where do you want to get in a year? Where do you want to get in 5 years? And, you know, there's a lot of research that says women don't do this as much as men do. And this is really about, you know, taking charge of your own career instead of sort of waiting for somebody to identify your talent and tap you on the shoulder for a promotion. I mean, you need to be very, very clear about what you think your next stretch job is in 1 year and 5 years, and probably whatever your listeners are thinking, I would say double it, because you're probably underestimating yourself, which is what women still do. And you know, I love what you say, Nicole, about go bold, go big, go bold. I completely agree with that. And you know, that's that piece about taking risks that we are not, as women, I think that we are not taught by culture to, we're not encouraged or taught. And so it's just something we have to say, yeah, that's a muscle that I need to work on. And so whatever
Yeah.
you think is your next big stretch goal, I would say probably double it.
Yeah, go bold, baby.
Go bold, baby.
And you speak a little bit there on some limiting beliefs, right? Our inability to think, maybe imposter syndrome, for example, or to think ahead. And what is another limiting belief that you've seen in your history of working with women that we can really address here to help women in tech move ahead?
Well, I mean, in some ways, Nicole, I get really discouraged because some of these things we've been talking about for 40 years, 50 years, and that's really how hard culture is to change, and the effect that this gigantic, almost Kool-Aid that we get soaked in, which is the culture. And you know, I have a saying that is never eliminate yourself. And once again, it's a real simple mantra. And you know what? I still have to say it to myself because and it's really something from my dad. It was, I don't know where he heard it, if he made it up or heard it somewhere, but he told all of his 7 kids, you know, the world is a tough, competitive place. And if you are not the best one for the team or for the job, or maybe just because people don't like how you look. You look a little different from them. Whatever it is, the world is very happy to eliminate you from opportunities. And so whatever you do, don't eliminate yourself. And that's that whole piece about that little voice in us that says, I'm not ready. When you hear that, just remember this little mantra about never eliminate yourself, and take that risk and put yourself out there. Because that's something that women are still dealing with, and men are not, very few men are burdened by that. As we all know, there's that old joke about, if a woman gets into her, pants and they're too tight, she says, oh, I got to lose some weight. And if a man, gets into his pants and they're too tight, he says, the cleaners shrunk my pants. And and this is the whole thing.
Awesome.
And so it is something that we carry. And we just have to say, yeah, throw off that burden and never eliminate yourself. That's another one of my mantras.
Yeah, ties real close with that positive self-talk. Reversing what you're thinking if you catch yourself in a bad thought, like I can't do this, and just reverse, I totally can do this. I can do it, and flipping anything you catch negative to positive. I try to do that for myself. Well, you're so full of wisdom. I could talk to you for hours, but we're coming towards the end of the show, but I want to make sure that we get any last nuggets for women in technology that will help guide their success through this time and forever, because you've been there, you've done it, you've seen what works. How can they help be more successful personally and professionally from what you've learned?
Well, I'm going to leave them with something fun to do, because everybody's got enough stress on them right now. And I know they're all working hard and they're trying to take care of their families.
We like
oh
fun.
My gosh, how about some fun?
Yes.
And so I'm going to say, listen, have you watched Queen's Gambit yet? Because if you haven't watched Queen's Gambit yet, it's fantastic. And it's all about a woman competing in an all-male world where she's the only one, and things are tough, and she has her ups and downs and struggles and setbacks, and she powers on through. And I think it'll really be motivating for people. And then the other one I would say is, if you haven't seen the PBS documentary Vote, which is really about that incredible history. Here we are in this year of the 100th anniversary of women's 75-year fight for the right to vote. Watch that, because what those women did was incredible, and what they overcame, and the setbacks that we went through, and they just kept on it. And it took them 75 years, and they just powered on through regardless of the setbacks. And so I would really basically say, I know this is a tough time. I know this is hard. Women are sliding a bit, but I know you are in the absolute fantastic field that is going to accelerate when we come out of this thing. And so hang in there, surround yourself with people who believe in you, and think big, baby.
Absolutely. And do you have a favorite quote? I know that you've studied many. Do you have a favorite quote to leave our audience with?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Or book, other than what you've just given them? Anything else? Any last parting words?
Well, the kind of books that I'm reading an awful lot of stuff right now about racial injustice, and I'm reading the book about what do you? Well, I'm drawing a blank on it. Caste. Yeah. I'm reading the book on caste, and so I would say, my son tells me that I need to read more fiction, because I'm totally a nonfiction focused, pretty serious reading about issues kind of thing. But that's what I would say, is that's what I'm reading right now.
And I always suggest Anne's book on powering up, because there is so much. Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg for what Anne has learned and has put her heart into this book on really how we can become achievers and women leaders can step up. So this body of work is timeless. And I just appreciate so much you being on this show and believe in everything that you have to say. And around voting, you know, we need to vote. We need to use our rights that we've earned, and we need to step into that office. We need to get to that 30% that you talk about there.
You know, that's another thing. I'm really glad you brought that up because for any women listening who may have been laid off or felt they had to sort of like just step back from their career a little bit because of all the demands that they have, other responsibilities with family and home, think about running for office. And I'm not saying think about running for Congress right now. I'm saying, you know, there's many political offices at the local level that these are not big time consuming jobs, but that's a really important leadership skill. It's something to put on your resume. We need many more women in there, and there's an awful lot of very important decisions being made about all of our lives that's happening at the local level. So really think about running for office, and if you can't do it yourself, support and help another woman get elected. That's huge.
Yes.
And I would like to just mention you mentioned my 2 podcasts at the beginning, but you know, my Powering Up podcast, I have a lot of just really fantastic women of all different generations that we're interviewing and putting out there that I think will be really inspiring for your listeners too.
It's such a joy to have other women on this show that are empowering, like yourself, of course, but other women that are doing similar work, because I really believe that the rising tide raises all boats. So the more empowerment, the more people doing work that you've done for years, that I have been inspired to do this type of work for, you know, let's just keep moving. I encourage everyone out there to keep coming together as a collective and to take some kind of action on today. You know, you listen to these podcasts, and Anne gave us a few homework assignments, but really things you can listen to podcasts all day, but what can you really do right now? What can you do today? Can you make an ally list? Can you reach out to one ally today as a result of this podcast? Can you subscribe to a new podcast that will change your life? Can you pick up a new book? I mean, if we don't start taking action on the things that we are consuming, we will just be listening and not taking action. So I'm always a big push to get you out there, and you can do it, and you're amazing, and you could squeeze in that 5 or 10 minutes a day listening to a podcast. I listen while I'm walking. You know, when can you get the time in to take action on some of these things? So, and otherwise, I'm sure some people may be inspired and want to see more. So did you want to just get them the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. Absolutely. You can, my website is www.annedoyleleadership.com. I do write I guess you call it a blog. It's a commentary that I write about every 6 weeks, really, for my global network. And it's really always about leadership or gender issues or social justice issues. Welcome to subscribe to me there. I'm starting to master Instagram. So
Well, we're always learning.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know you tech
to
women
learn.
are laughing at me. I'm finally mastering that. But of course, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook.
Next,
All
I'll
those
get you on
things. So I'm pretty
Snapchat.
easy to get in touch with. No, not Snapchat. It's like I can't do anymore.
Yeah, join Anne Doyle on TikTok. No, I'm just kidding.
Nope. That's not happening.
Oh, you're so funny. You're so sweet. And just thank you from all the women out there for what you've done, for creating a legacy, for leaving a body of work, and for all the women that you've inspired, including myself. This is what it's about. When you do this work, there's not enough people saying thank you. There's not always anyone saying thank you. Sometimes you just scream into the air and hope that someone is motivated, and you have just done that. You have raised your voice. You have broken, the glass ceiling for so many, and just keep doing it. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's an honor to have you on this show, and to know you. And I am a little fangirled on this. I told my daughter, I was like, Mommy has to go talk to a very, very awesome woman in the movement. And she's like, the movement? I was like, okay, I'll tell
The
you later.
movement. All
I don't have
right. Yeah. Raise great girls and
Yes.
boys. That is
Yes.
really important work.
Yes. And be kind to yourself, be gentle to yourself during this time, but go
Yep.
bold and go big, as Anne and I said.
Go
So thank
bold,
you
go
so
big.
much.
Okay.
Have a great day.
See you, everybody. Bye, Nicole.
Bye.